You are listening to Build What's Next, Digital Product Perspectives. In case you missed it in our last episode, we're proud to announce GlobalLogic as a presenting partner. And we wanted to highlight this partnership by letting you hear from a few prominent GlobalLogic voices from time to time as the season progresses. GlobalLogic is a Hitachi Group company, and they're trusted digital engineering partners to the world's largest and most forward-thinking companies, which is why we thought they would be a great partner to bring onto the show, given the content that we try to cover here. So originally presented as a GlobalLogic and Reuters webinar, this special episode is hosted by GlobalLogic's Chief Business Officer and Head of Global Industries, Srini Shankar, who has been appointed GlobalLogic's new President and CEO effective February 3rd, 2025. Join us as Srini engages with two-time IndyCar Series and Indy 500 champion Josef Newgarden, Michael Krut, CIO of Penske Transportation Solutions, and Tara Vatcher, SVP of Software Architecture and Development at Stellantis. Together, they dive into the transformative power of AI and technology, sharing strategies, challenges, and best practices for achieving breakthrough results. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and we have an exciting conversation up ahead of us. Srini Shankar, I'm the Chief Business Officer at GlobalLogic. We're a well-known and well-recognized company in product, software engineering, and digital engineering services. And I'm absolutely delighted today to be able to host the race towards transformative outcomes, the power of technology and AI in delivering breakthrough results. And we're actually just going to be talking about that. I'm delighted to be joined by three eminent individuals. I'll have them introduce themselves. We've got Tara Vatcher and Mike Krut are from the industry. They represent two companies that are Fortune 500 companies and are doing amazing work in terms of technology and AI in delivering transformative outcomes in the automotive and the mobility industry. So I'll have them introduce themselves as we get into the questions. But before I do that, I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to welcome a very special guest. We also have another panelist who's kind of a legend in the field of motorsports. Josef Newgarden, maybe just raise your hand.
Hey, everybody.
Josef Newgarden is a two-time Indy 500 champion, a two-time Entity IndyCar Series champion, and drives for Team Penske. He's actually the first driver since 2002 to win two consecutive Indy 500 mile races, and hopes to become the first one to actually win three in a row. So good luck with that. His two wins in 2024 give Newgarden 31 career victories, making him actually the winningest active American driver in the IndyCar Series. I didn't know that winningest was a word. So I would say you're probably the most decorated active driver in the IndyCar Series. So really absolutely thrilled to have you join us. Let me start with you, Tara. As you introduce yourself, you're representing a company that's probably in an industry that's seeing the most seismic shift towards being software defined, right? And in some sense, the role that you play is the chief architect of that shift towards being software defined. So maybe as you introduce yourself and the role that you play at Stellantis, I'd love to have you talk about, how profound this shift has been in this industry and for your company, particularly over the last 10 years or so.
Thanks, Srini. So just to introduce myself, I'm Tara Vatcher. I lead actually software architecture and base software development for Stellantis, and I'm located here in Detroit. But you're absolutely right, Srini. So one of our largest transformations right now is the transformation to software-defined vehicles, and we're really living that day in and day out. You asked the question, how has it changed, right? And it's almost changed our industry completely. Right. So being very mechanically focused, we've now brought on much more of the software elements, right? And that goes from, the technologies that we're bringing in place, such as new infotainment systems, assisted driving, autonomous driving, personalized experiences that customers are looking for and that they're requesting in their vehicles. That's all part of the software-defined vehicle. Right. And in order to do those, in order to bring these sort of flexible features and these new experiences to our customer, this base platform needs to be very, very different. Something, really it's a technology we haven't done before. And not only that, it's actually being done completely in-house. So it's It's huge in the way of what our product will be, but also in the way that we develop our product is part of that technology transformation, just the way we develop, right? So the processes, the tools that we use, that's all part of this transformation. I mean, it's large. It's large, and the experiences that we're bringing in, the people that we're bringing in, all different industries can play a part of this. And it's an extremely exciting time. It's an exciting time for all of us, and in particular, if you're in the software domain and in the technology domains, this is the most exciting time to be in the automotive industry.
Wonderful, Tara, and love to dig in more into not just the software-defined product itself, but also how fundamentally you're reshaping Stellantis to being a software development company in developing that product. So just thrilled to have you there today. Mike, thank you again for joining us. You represent a company that's actually being transformed in the business of truck leasing and fleet management. And first off, congratulations on Team Penske. I mean, I think it's probably the best time to be part of Team Penske. Absolutely. With 2 back-to-back wins. Where do you see your reflections on how technology is transforming, this business of truck leasing? I'm sure you do more than just truck leasing.
Well, first of all, Mike Krut, I'm the Senior Vice President of IT and Chief Information Officer for Penske Transportation Solutions. And, if I look at the AI and the impact on customer experience, you have the basics. If you just think about AI, you have the 24/7 availability of the AI solution. Chatbots are up and they don't need to sleep or get fed on a daily basis. The response times can be better. And then there's also the personalized assistance. If you think about, because the chatbots and the AI are absorbing so much of customer specific information, they can incorporate that into their responses at a faster pace than a typical, like a service desk representative could do. Now, if you think about it a little bit from the Penske Transportation Solutions perspective, our whole motto is taking care of the customer. That's what Roger's always instilled within his organizations. And, back in from an AI perspective, in 2016, we rolled out guided repair, which helps technicians, give based on the complaint that we receive from the customer and the fault codes in our maintenance repair order history, we can provide technicians with the proper procedures and parts to solve a problem. And then more recently, we rolled out proactive diagnostics. And that one was very exciting because, the last thing a fleet manager wants is downtime in their fleet. And with proactive diagnostics, we can use information of one of our over 200,000 connected vehicles, and we can actually tell a customer weeks in advance when we think their vehicle will break down based on the fault codes and the pattern of those fault codes. So just in that, Tara mentioned the transformation, but when you just think about how the AI piece impacts the customer experience, it's just, as Tara mentioned, it's a very exciting time in the industry. A little scary sometimes, but very exciting as well.
Absolutely. We'll dig into that in a moment. Joseph, once again, congratulations from all of us and the best wishes for number 3. As a professional driver, you've been driving in the circuit for a while now. How have you seen technology evolve to actually give you the edge in those turns, right? Because I guess it's all about winning in those turns. So just bring it to life for us with a few examples on, how pivotal technology has been and how much you rely on technology as a professional driver.
Sure. Good morning. Great to be here with everybody. Yeah, on our sport, it's no different than the industry side in automotive. We're developing at a pretty quick rate. And, the exciting thing about, being in the sport of racing is that you're really, in a lot of ways, you're at the forefront of what's being developed for, the commercial side and what people every day are going to see in the future, whether it's hybridization or, it's estimation within what we're doing heading into a race or live time within a race environment, how we're predicting things and trying to make decisions. All of these different tools that we have at our disposal are definitely, they're at the forefront of what we do. We have to be really, savvy with the way we utilize the tools in front of us, because if we're not maximizing the development of these tools, then our competitors will. And at some point we'll get overtaken if we're not at the cutting edge of it. So it's fun, but I think what I would bring it back to is within our sport, we're competing against other humans. It's still, the human element is still very important. And so we're always looking at, from a sanctioning body, when you look at racing, you go, where do we want to implement technology and where do we want to pull it back and keep some of that human element in play? So as much as it's advancing so quickly, we have all these different capabilities within the sport. There's still some things that are just within, human control and human oversight still has to, rule at the end of the day. So there's a balance in there, but it's very fun to be a part of it. We're developing so many different tool sets, whether it's at the track or away from the track. And it's a constant evolving thing, just like the panelists are talking about here within the industry. So it's an exciting time to be a part of the sport, and you've got to be very fast moving if you want to stay ahead of the pack.
Wonderful. Let me get to AI and Gen AI. So let me start with Mike. I mean, you made a reference to predictive diagnostics, guided repair. I'm sure you do stuff like computer vision modeling and all of that stuff. Yeah. How core is AI and machine learning to all of this? And what's the role that AI plays in delivering some of these outcomes? Reducing downtime for your fleet of whatever 400,000 plus vehicles is a direct impact, I would imagine, to your top line and bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, we basically have taken AI and have integrated it in with our operations. And there's two aspects of that. When we're servicing trucks, we will bring AI in. We'll use that guided repair or that proactive diagnostics. What the whole intent is that the sooner that we can get a truck repaired 100% correctly the first time and then sent back out to our customers or prevent that downtime really has a direct impact on that customer experience. We've also recently announced a solution we call Catalyst AI. And if you're a fleet manager, you're always looking for, how does my fleet compare to other fleets in the industry with similar use cases, climate, geography, et cetera. And because we've connected over 200,000 vehicles, we now have all these data points. We have over 57 billion data points right now where we're looking at how we can compare our fleet or our customers' fleet to similar fleets in the industry to see if they can get better fuel mileage, better wear and tear on their vehicle, and how is that the right vehicle specification for their specific use case. And we're almost to the point now that we're going to be letting customers upload other fleets outside their truck leasing fleet into this Catalyst AI, which will help us expand even further into providing customer more insight on how their fleet's operating within their specific areas. So it's a really exciting time for that.
Are these mostly commercial fleet operators, or what about AI for a consumer like myself who might want to rent a Penske truck over the weekend, or for a consumer? How about the consumer segment?
Well, we do that for, we have, with our consumer fleet, that all rolls into these connected vehicles. So we're always providing and working with our OEMs to provide the best specs on our vehicles to support what the consumer needs are over a given period of time, whether that's our consumer rental or our commercial rental business.
Great. Tara, there's been a lot of talk in the press about the Stellar Brain, the Stellar Smart Cockpit, and to the extent you can share, what can we expect from Stellar Brain and those products, and how fundamentally will it reshape the consumer experience in a car or outside a car in terms of interaction with dealers and so on and so forth?
Yes. So Stellar Brain is actually our software-defined vehicle platform. That's what we call it. So that is our transformation to the SDV. You brought up Stellar Cockpit. So all of those they're also platforms, but so for example, the cockpit one would be our infotainment platform, but that then comes on our overall architecture, which is Stellar Brain. So just sort of put that in context, how it changes our customers. So we think of Stellar Brain really as the enabler to provide a lot of these different features to our customers, right? So for example, obviously, as you look at, and I'll just bring this up because Mike sort of alluded to it a little bit when he was talking about quality and the changes, that maybe the vehicles may need. So one of the things that Stellar Brain enables is the opportunity for the hardware and software delineation, and then obviously to provide over-the-air capability to the vehicles after they've been sold, right? And oftentimes you do find maybe issues, or maybe it's a slight bug, or whatever the case might be, or maybe it's new features that are being developed. That is exactly one of the aspects of what Stellar Brain can provide for our customers, right? So we're no longer looking at the traditional where you're saying, once the car is purchased, that you get the features that you get, and then in 10 years time, maybe that vehicle becomes somewhat obsolete in terms of technology. Well, that's exactly one of the things that we're trying to provide. As long as that hardware capability is there, obviously you can enhance the software aspect going forward. I think one of the questions you asked then was also around the consumer, and what are some of the things that the consumer would gain from something like Stellar Brain. Well, one of the other enablers is the connectivity of the vehicle out to the cloud, and out to maybe other vehicles, as and how it connects with other vehicles. From a consumer standpoint, right, some of the things and the features that we would be offering is the personalization, right? So if a customer gets in the car, having this ability, the car would recognize them, right? So they would recognize that maybe what your preferences are. Maybe if you plug in an address of where you're going to be going, it might recognize, sort of a preferred route, and kind of show that for you. So there's many different things that we never even really have been able to think about before this, that technology is giving us and AI is giving us. And we continue to develop these features as we think, customers and consumers are looking for them. But I say that very much on the personalized front, because we also offer fleet services as well. And Mike talked a lot about those. But that's also within our scope, and obviously the Stellar Brain overall project in and of itself.
I want to dig into this delineation of hardware and software. Does that necessarily mean that 5 years out, when I buy a Stellantis vehicle, whether that's a Jeep or I hate to say Maserati, because I'm not that kind of a guy who would go in for a Maserati yet, but whatever it is, what does that mean? Does it mean that essentially over a period of time I could continually purchase features at the software level? What does that mean from a feature roadmap standpoint?
Yeah, it does mean somewhat what you've said, right? You can so different features, I would say, can be enabled and obviously downloaded as they're being developed and as they're being provided for consumers. They can be purchased or downloaded with the Stellar Brain infrastructure and with the Stellar Brain platform. So that's exactly what it means from a consumer standpoint, right? So let's say, for example, autonomous driving, level 3 is coming out, and it's not necessarily on the car that you purchased today. That doesn't mean it's not going to be available, let's say, in a year's time. In which case, if it is, as long as the hardware is within the vehicle and you have the ability in order to maintain and obtain that, it's only the software piece that needs to be updated. And that's what we mean when we say that.
Okay. Before I just go to Joseph for a question around how AI is transforming, the way he drives, what about the experience, and the intimacy with the consumer post the purchase of the car, right? I mean, today it's primarily a dealer-led model. Does this allow you to essentially have control over the customer journey and the customer experience well beyond the purchase of the vehicle?
Yeah, it does. It does, because you wouldn't necessarily, the dealer still has their role, right, where they sell the vehicle. After that, it becomes more of a relationship directly with the OEMs, right, and the consumer itself. And so we do differentiate the businesses. There's different value streams that we look at, and those features after the car is purchased is considered a different value stream.
Wonderful. Joseph, would love to hear some exciting stories from you in terms of what goes on inside the car, right? I think Michael talked a lot about vehicle telemetry and all the data that's coming out of these vehicles. I'd imagine, there's enough instrumentation within these IndyCar vehicles, if you will. When you put on that suit and you get into the car, do you feel like Iron Man talking to Friday or Jarvis? I'm a big Marvel fan, so I had to make that reference.
Yeah, I like a Tony Stark reference. I would happily be Ironman and feel like that in this role. It's very cool. You know, I was always infatuated by speed when I was a kid, and I liked anything that went quick. And what was more interesting to me when I was a kid was pulling stuff apart and understanding how it worked. So whether it was, whether it was a bike or it was, for me, it was a motorized scooter was the first thing that I had that was motorized. And then it got into go-karts and, just trying to understand what made things work, what made them fast, and then how do you make them faster? It's still what my job is today. When we show up to the racetrack, we're just trying to optimize a puzzle each weekend, and you're competing against all these competitors trying to solve that puzzle the quickest across a race weekend. And that puzzle is always changing. I think that's what's really interesting in our landscape, the way we utilize, technology development, specifically like AI case, would be within simulation. We're always running simulations within our environment, whether that's at the track or away from the track. Certainly away from the track is becoming more prevalent because for cost constraints, they've reduced our real-time track environment testing time, which brings budgets down. But then the funny thing is, then we push budget to different areas, which then turns into simulation budget, and we figure out, okay, how do we make the simulated environment as good as the real world? But what's exciting about the simulated environment is you can be so much more efficient. That you don't have to worry about taking an hour to change a differential setting. Whereas, in a simulated environment, I could change a differential setting that would take mechanics an hour. We can do it in 2 minutes and then go out and do another run. But constantly trying to correlate and, identify the accuracies within the simulation to the real world is where we're putting in a lot of time. And that's where we're constantly correlating the model to make sure that it's up to date to reality and constantly cross-checking post and pre-weekend. So there's a lot of workload now that happens in, to 2024, 2025 that was not happening 30 years ago. It's just it's a different landscape, but it still distills down to there isn't a mechanical piece to all of this. I think that the driver himself is really the mechanical piece, and the car itself has, a lot of mechanical nature to it. And that's where in the beginning of this conversation, it's interesting to see where we're implementing technology and use case for that. And where do we want to have technology, but where do we want to strip it out? Certain things and elements like on a commercial vehicle where you have, automatic braking systems or traction control systems, stability systems. We purposely strip all that out of our race cars because we want to see that, human element inside there where, this is a controlled environment and we want to see who's the best at, maximizing this car's capabilities in this specific environment for these conditions. Whereas in the real world or reality, we probably want to help a consumer do that as best as they can and provide safeguards for them. So there's just a lot of parallels between the two worlds and trying to understand, where you have to be good and efficient nowadays. It's changed from what it was 30 years ago.
Give me an example of, you talked about the role of simulation, right? I mean, what's a simulation that your team does today that just blows your mind, that would never have been possible even 10 years back?
Well, probably race simulation has come the farthest. And what I mean by that is race strategy. When you look at real-time simulation and where we need the most precise accuracy from these models is within race strategy. When a race is happening in real time and it's going to take an hour and a half, maybe 3 hours if it's the Indianapolis 500, the longest race of the year. In that defined race period, you're making decisions the entire time that you're running that race. You've already come in with a race plan and said, this is what we believe is the optimized strategy for running this distance, for fuel mileage, tire usage, et cetera. And then that changes. Race conditions changes live. Caution periods, we cannot predict exactly what's going to happen. But when you look at the race strategy tools that we're developing now, they're becoming more and more impressive with how they can call a race. And so you still have that human element where you've got a team of engineers and strategists that are trying to interact with this tool set that's providing the information. And it's constantly trying to, learn and optimize from years past and current conditions on, what is the right decision in key critical moments for the race. So that's where I'm seeing the most advancement in real-time environment. But it's still getting better. You'd be surprised. We don't just rely purely on the modeling of a race right now and what a software tool is telling us, but it's way more accurate than what it was 10, 20 years ago. It's pretty impressive how far it's come.
That's awesome. So Mike, Tara made a reference to the fact that it's just not the software-defined product itself, but just the process of how you do software development has fundamentally changed in the companies that you represent. Talk to us a little bit about maybe, how have you fostered a change in culture? I mean, innovation, fail fast, software development culture from being a traditional, maybe industrial company or a logistics company. How have you driven that culture change, if you will?
That's a great question. 20 years ago, started here, it was all pretty much a waterfall. And we went through a waterfall methodology, which I think Tara is probably very familiar with. And then we started experimenting with Agile. And what we've seen in our business is that the demand for digitization across the business is in essence exploded. And in order to meet that and the requirements, you can't go through and spend weeks defining all the requirements, because by the time you get through it, some things have changed on the ground. So our organization is probably 80-90% agile at this point in time, which was a huge shift if you look back over the last 7 or 8 years. And it's really, we put in the CI/CD pipelines, we put in XOps to optimize as much as we can to improve the developer experience. Our whole focus is trying to ease the developer's job as much as possible so they can better support both our internal and external customers. So we're seeing quite a bit of change in that space. And then recently we've worked with a couple of different partners on how AI itself can enable the DevOps space and really even actually improve developer productivity. I don't see a situation or an area where AI is going to completely replace a developer, but we do see solutions where they can improve their productivity, match that with developing unit test cases and improving the testing process. And result is, I think we're going to get better quality code, better quality solutions out to our customers in a more timely manner.
So on the Agile part, whether it's on the predictive diagnostics, vehicle telemetry, customer experience, your chatbots that you refer to, are you getting to almost like in many of these a weekly release cycle of features and functionality?
Probably bi-weekly in some cases. It also depends on the particular business use case. Some are more pushing, and we are deploying on a weekly basis. Other ones are a little bit more stable and don't have as much change in that business operational unit, so we have a little bit more flexibility. But as we move more and more to a microservices-based architecture, we will see that change where we will be able, have more than weekly, probably every other day to a day change to better support our customer needs in the field.
Wonderful. Tara, any reflections on that? And I also want to get into security and a little bit, but what about at Stellantis, right? I mean, you're now almost like a software development shop, and as the chief architect, how have you seen software development evolve in Stellantis over the last decade or so?
Yeah, well, very, very similar to what Mike said. I mean, he's absolutely correct. What they've seen at Penske is very similar to us, right? So we have also moved towards that agile development, and as you mentioned, develop fast and fail fast. So I think that's in common. Interestingly, as Joseph was talking as well, we use a lot of simulation as well. And then when we look at how we're doing our testing, and again, you must remember at Stellantis we have 14 different brands, right? So there's a lot of complexity when you just think of some of those brands. And one of the key things that we're obviously trying to do is to reduce that complexity, because we're only 3 years in, right, as Stellantis, right? So you do need to remember where we started from, but that provides its own challenges. But we're always looking at ways that we can automate, we can be more efficient across the board. We're looking at how we can use AI, just like Mike was saying, for testing and for identifying unit test cases and even changing, our requirements into code and those types of things. So always looking at ways that we can improve the overall quality and the overall speed of our development. We live that day in and day out. And there's challenges. I'm not saying we're perfect, obviously, but there's definitely challenges. And I think but as long as you have that vision in mind, I think the progress is there.
Great. I think just a segue to security, right? And as you start moving towards more agile development, faster release of features and functionality. I mean, this is a very highly regulated industry, much like healthcare is. You've got to have a level of redundancy in these systems, right? I mean, the last thing you want to have is a bug when someone's driving and a security and a compromise to driver safety. With the speed of how things are changing, how do you address that element of making sure that this is you have 100% redundant systems, absolutely no compromise on driver safety, abstraction of software, hardware, so that hardware can run on itself if something happens to software. How do you look at that side of the house?
Yeah, well, speed is not a replacement for safety, right? So I don't distinguish them, So obviously safety first. I mean, and as you mentioned, there are some very, very critical safe elements of a vehicle, right? Just like you would think of as an airplane. But the de facto standard we use, obviously, functional safety is out there in the ISO 26262. That is our standard that we use. But as you look at the different, let's say, features on a vehicle, not all of them are that same highest level of safety requirements, right? So some require redundancy and full redundancy, but definitely not all of them require that. But we do our analysis. We obviously do our analysis. We look at, our DFIMAs as well and design appropriately to ensure that our solutions are the safest that can be developed. But with that said, we still follow the same paths that I've mentioned, right? Where we still look at developing it fast, but safety is not a secondary at all. It's very much in line with what the requirements of our vehicle and our features are.
Yeah, and I think the industry's also moved and evolved to standards like AUTOSAR that provide some level of industry level standards on these things, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, AUTOSAR is one standard that's used, and primarily that's to ensure, the interfaces. And when you're looking at the multiple different modules on a given vehicle, that's where that becomes important. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily that doesn't tie into the safety per se. I mean, there's elements of it that can, but that's not the functional safety aspect.
Mike, how about at Penske? Cyber, when you look at vehicle telemetry data, putting sensors on the vehicles and how do you deal with security in that regard?
So Penske a little bit different because in Tara's case, she's the OEM, where our case, we receive the vehicles from the OEM. So a lot of what Tara was referring to is really managed by our partners, Freightliner, Hino, Volvo, et cetera, that they manage that part of it. From a cybersecurity perspective, none of the information that we have on our connected fleet vehicles, it's just data coming back for us. We don't allow any executables or anything into our environment that would impact our back-end infrastructure. But the sensors, of course, we're working with the OEMs to improve them, but they provide us the tools to update, manage, patch those sensors as we do our repair process or preventive maintenance process.
Great. Joseph, I just wanted to switch gears to sustainability. I'd imagine you actually drive cars that are twin turbocharged engines delivering 600 to 700 horsepower. Doesn't really connote sustainability, right? So what is your view in terms of sustainability in motorsports?
Well, I think it's an interesting challenge, right? And it's like anything in racing, it's a great testing bed for.
So I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable with that question, but.
No, not at all. Not at all. Actually, it's very much at the forefront. It's at the forefront for all of us, right? In the world right now. And, racing, we're all being asked this question, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. And certainly racing has a little bit more of a target on it, just because of the nature of it. But I think it's a fascinating challenge for us. We have great partnerships across the board. Certainly at Penske, sustainability is a big initiative for the entire company right now. I think most companies are very at the front with this. And when you look at motorsports specifically, we've developed 100% renewable fuel within our cars right now. and the technology required to do that and to optimize the fuel to where we didn't lose any performance loss. So that was just implemented actually last year full time in 2023, which was great timing for us at the Indy 500. We were promoting that message and we ended up winning it at the same time. And then another partner of ours, Firestone, is developing a reusable tire and a sustainable tire with, in all of these cases, how do we transport the cars to the track? What are we doing with our fleets, which Mike would know a ton about. Every little case is being looked at to see how we can, become more sustainable across the board. So I think we actually like the question in motorsport, even though people would think we would want to shy away from it. But it's a great challenge for us. Hybridization is becoming even more prevalent. Obviously the EV case is rising in the United States, but I also think hybridization is becoming, more at the forefront of what is the bridge to this new technology and how are we going to get there. So, we're still a great testing bed for that within our environment and developing that technology and use case. So we're constantly becoming more sustainable in a lot of different areas, and we love talking about it too because it is our mission. And we're trying to do that at a high level without losing performance, which I think just accelerates the development not only in our industry but the everyday use case for the commercial user.
Absolutely. I just want to also underscore similar trends that we're seeing with other franchises like the Formula One. I think they're also moving to this whole concept of ERS and, leveraging regenerative braking to actually drive higher performance as opposed to just, turbocharged engines and so on. So we're certainly seeing also evidence across other franchises like NASCAR and the Formula One towards moving to a more sustainable racing without compromising, the fun in it. So, and the speed of it. Good segue into Penske, Mike, around, you run a fairly large fleet. Where are you in terms of the transition to EV, the infrastructure to be able to support EV fleets in the future, and in overall, your efforts around sustainability?
So I think when you mention EVs, we are partnering with our OEMs to continue to be at the forefront of the EV. We have several EV solutions running primarily in California. We worked with another partner to put in our own charging stations. Where we see some challenges is that the grid isn't quite ready for the expansion of EV as they think. So we need to continue to work with the local municipalities and the state governments to get the grid in place to help support the further expansion of EVs across the industry. So we've seen a lot of successes, but in some cases, an EV has less capacity. If you take a tractor, it's going to have less capacity and it's going to cost more. So at some point in time, I see that balancing out in the industry. But as we continue to experiment and, when an OEM announces a new vehicle, we're one of the first partners they go to because of our different transportation needs to continue to expand that out in the marketplace. I was just out at our Stockton location and viewed our charging facilities out there, and they were really impressive. And they expect that area, the EVs, to continue to grow and leverage that. They're actually adding another whole unit into that environment because of the growth we're seeing in that space.
What implications does that have in terms of building platforms to be able to address that transition? Like, for example, route optimization, to be able to support, EV charging, because, obviously everyone has range anxiety and that has to also be taken into account in commercial settings. So any implications around the software platforms that need to support the transition?
Yeah, in our fleet insight environment, we are looking at options to better provide that information to customers where the charging stations were at. We have a whole team, we call it the customer success team, that will sit down with the customer and take them through some of those requirements that they have if they're looking into an EV and how that EV can be used within their specific use case, within a specific industry, within a specific geography, to kind of say, is that the right solution for you at this point in time? And we continue to expand on that. And we see that, there's a a growing interest in that space, but there's a little bit of hesitancy at the same time till they see more, again, once I mentioned around getting the grid in place and having more available charging units that will reduce that range anxiety.
Tara, if I just ask you to close out on the sustainability side of things, what efforts from Stellantis and efforts that you might be leading in that direction?
Yeah, so very similar to Mike, right? So I think our CEO has been very outspoken, right? So Stellantis, well, firstly, our investments into electrification and even our adoption as we move into our Dare Forward plan by 2030, we are looking to have a significant portion of our brands will be transitioned to electrification. We also have a company called Free to Move that supports the charging infrastructure. But like Mike said, I think that there's still, if you just look at the U.S., there's still a ways to go. In particular, if you look at certain Midwest states and what that would look like, and even we have a new president right now, and so time will tell what some of those changes and the overall government will change. But very similar to what Mike has said, all of those aspects are really important for sustainability, but we're definitely supporting that across all our brands. And like I said, the CEO has been very vocal about that and where we're headed. And then for me, I mean, I'm responsible for some of the new tech platforms, but I'm also responsible for some of the powertrain development software for some of our in-flight programs. So even the immediate vehicles that are being released, I share that responsibility with a colleague of mine. But yeah, we're in it day in and day out.
Thank you for joining us on Build What's Next, Digital Product Perspectives. If you would like to know more about how Method can partner with you and your organization, you can find more information at method.com. Also, don't forget to follow us on social and be sure to check out our monthly Tech Talks. You can find those on our website. And finally, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on any future episodes. We'll see you next time.